The Spiritual Handyman, bringing spiritual tools to the hands of the people who need them. Sponsored by the Eagle Heart Foundation. The Eagle Heart Foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that brings charitable contributions and educational enhancements to the people. So how can you be a part of the Spiritual Handyman and the Eagle Heart Foundation? The Triple Win Situation. This book was written by Granddaughter Crow, and half of the proceeds go to the Eagle Heart Foundation, which in turn sponsors the Spiritual Handyman. How to get it one? It's on Amazon and Kindle for only $9.99. So we are here to bring tools to you. Thank you so much, Spiritual Handyman. We believe in what you do.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Spiritual Handyman Internet TV show. My name is Jason Anselick, and I am your host. And today we have an amazing guest. We have Douglas Vermeeren, and he has just recently released a book, Personal Power Mastery. Did I say that right, Douglas?
You did. You got it. It's perfect.
Yes, I got it on the first try. All right. And he's going to share with us tools about getting our personal mastery in the right direction and getting us motivated to be the best that we can be, and where we're going to start with that, right? Like I'm in a good place, but how do I keep moving? Before we get too far into that, I want to remind everybody that the Spiritual Handyman show is available on YouTube. Also, you can connect through the Facebook page, thespiritualhandyman.com, and through Instagram. Please like, join, share, comment, do all of the cool things, hit all the cool buttons, and be a part of the community. This is all about bringing the right things to you folks. This is about the viewers and the listeners and what tools are working best for you. And the more feedback you give us on what's working, the more value we can provide. So let's get right to that. And I'm going to have Douglas introduce himself and give us a little bit of background. And Douglas, please take it away.
Awesome. Hey, so I appreciate you having me on your show. This is totally awesome. I guess the best way to kind of most people like to kind of get a context of sort of who I am, where I came from. Honestly, I know a lot of people were sort of raised with either parents or friends or associates that were involved in personal development. Not me. In fact, my dad worked in construction. My mom babysat kids in the home. Their idea of working smarter was actually working harder. And so they were hard workers, and I never had any exposure to any kind of personal development, any of this power thought that you could believe it and achieve it. None of this stuff. I hadn't heard of any of it. And so kind of what I experienced through my life, as you can imagine, is my parents were what I call in the poverty pattern. They didn't have a lot of money. Every time they worked, they paid. So in other words, their bills kind of matched their paycheck to paycheck. And so I was raised in this sort of situation of have-not. I was among the have-nots. There was definitely no wealth in our family. And so when I got to college age, which I kind of student loaned my way through college. I acquired a lot of debt. I was, using credit cards to pay for everything from groceries to you name it. I was like severely in debt. Anyways, I took a summer job selling pest control door to door in California. And I don't know if any of your audience has done door to door sales before, but it's definitely not the easiest place to be. And now add to that I was selling pest control, right? So again, this was absolutely I don't know about you, but try this as an experiment. Knock on the neighbor next to you, knock on their door and tell them that they've got bugs and see what they think about that, right? So definitely I was not making friends. And at the same time, because I was having, so many challenges trying to get out of debt and all this, I was becoming really discouraged. In fact, I remember going into a supermarket and putting down a loaf of bread, a jug of milk, and a handful of these Ichiban instant noodles. Total came up to $4.22, and my card declined. So my life was just terrible, right? It was awful. And so here I was selling pest control, but I wasn't having a lot of success. So I was very discouraged. I was putting in, again, lots of effort and time, but I wasn't seeing any kind of reward or any change in my situation. So it was at about that time that I decided I was going to quit, right? Like, I'm throwing in the towel. This is the end. And to be honest with you, I was so discouraged that, I had a lot of negativity that was going through my mind. And even to the point, let's be honest, we're being vulnerable here. I even contemplated the easiest way is just take your own life and then everything gets easy. Now, that's not necessarily true, but those are thoughts that went through my mind. Well, thank goodness I had a friend of our family's recognize that I was going through some serious depressing thoughts. And so he actually gave me a gift of 2 books. The first book was How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. This is my first blush with personal development, remember? So he said, the first person you need to be friends with is yourself. Read this book. And so I did. And as I read that book, obviously my life began to change and I began to think a little differently about who I was. The second book he gave me was actually even more life-changing for me. And that was Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Now, for those of you unfamiliar with the book, came out in 1937. The way Napoleon Hill wrote the book is he went out and he interviewed more than 400 of the world's top achievers in his day. People like Thomas Edison, Henry Ford, Andrew Carnegie, the Wrigleys, the Rockefellers, the list goes on. So when I read that book, I really began to believe in myself in a higher level. But I have to confess, we're being truthful here, I also became a bit jealous. Now, what do I mean by that? Is I actually felt like, you know, Napoleon Hill had interviewed all these top guys like Henry Ford and all these really neat people. I want to do that. And I also felt like, my goodness, this is the stuff that made it into the book. What was on the cutting room floor, right? Like what kind of secrets did they reveal that Napoleon's holding back on us, right? Like what's the right? So I kind of became a bit jealous and I decided to start my own journey of interviewing top achievers. And so I started with a few that were accessible to me, people that I knew through, you know, family connections or others, millionaires and so forth. And I had one of them actually give me a really good insight. He said, you know, out of all the research that you've been doing with me about success, there's one question you haven't asked me that's going to change everything. And I said, well, what's that? He says, you haven't asked me who else I know that you should talk to. So I began to ask that question out at the end of all these interviews. And by the time I was done, I got to people like Warren Buffett, Richard Branson, Donald Trump, whether you like him or not, Oprah Winfrey, you know, the founders of FedEx, Nike, Reebok, the Aveda Group, Christian Dior, Jordache Jeans, Gitano Sportswear, California Citrus. The list just went on and on and on and on of top achievers that I met. And this study took about a decade to do. And I included in that not just business leaders like what Napoleon Hill had done, but I also included thought leaders, spiritual leaders. I included athletes and celebrities, people who'd won gold medals and Academy Awards and, you know, Grammy Awards and so forth. And so over that space of about 10 years, when I did this series of interviews with people, some massive mind shifts had occurred for me. Now, it's interesting. I didn't necessarily have to wait for 10 years to make that big shift. As I started as a 19-year-old, in my first 6 months of studying these top achievers and having them as mentors and getting them to tell me really what the keys to success were, my financial life turned around. In fact, in the first 6 months of these interviews, I did $1.6 million in about 6 months, which is about $9,000 a day. And I've never looked back. In fact, even today, I still meet with top achievers. In fact, I've got one that has become one of my mentors, and I meet with him every single Friday. He's worth about $700 million, and we do lunch every Friday. And so I guess, maybe to begin this cool conversation that we're going to have about, you know, how do I take my life to the next level? I'm here to tell you that who you surround yourself with and who you choose to learn from is probably going to be the greatest indicator of how successful you will be. And the truth of the matter is right now is I see a lot of people in this space of personal development that are learning from people that, to be quite frank, aren't qualified to teach. In other words, they've never done what you're trying to do. And if they have done what, you know, they're trying to do, either they're not great teachers, they don't know how to teach it, or they're just teaching theory, right? And so I'm going to suggest that the first thing that you really want to do, what do they say, is your network determines your net worth. I believe that that's true. But I also believe that the saying, even harsher, maybe this is a bit rude or mean to say, but if you hang out with 4 losers, you become the 5th. And so you've really got to decide in your heart who you want to be, and then do everything in your power to spend time with those who are already that. And the more that you can spend time with people who are already that, you're going to learn from the way that they think, the way that they evaluate opportunities, the way that they make decisions, the way that they take action, the things that they choose not to do, and the priorities that they have in their life. You'll be able to see that your life becomes a very close reflection to those people that you spend time with. And by the way, that's not just in person. That's also online, in books, on TV, whatever it is you do. If you want to, now I'm not saying that, you know, you want to become a good dancer, watch Dances with the Stars. That's maybe not the way it works. But I am going to tell you that if you spend a lot of time watching television, you know, you're going to veg out like other people that watch television. You won't become like the ones on TV. You'll become like others that watch TV.
Wait a minute. So
yeah.
Wait, so that doesn't actually work?
No, actually, it's so funny. I've got a T-shirt that says, I saw it on TV. I'm pretty sure I can do it. And that's definitely not the truth, right? Like, we need to understand that, I guess here's a good analogy to say this. Like, a lot of people ask me, okay, so I went out and did these interviews with the 400 top achievers. What's different between Think and Grow Rich, what it teaches, and what happens today? Well, there's a few things. Number one, Napoleon Hill wrote that book in 1937. So we didn't know a lot yet about psychology and brain science to the extent that we do today. In fact, one neuroscientist that I interviewed told me point blank that over the last decade, 98% of things that we understand about the brain has changed. We know more about neuroscience. In fact, there's a really great couple of books. Martin Lindstrom's book, Biology, is brilliant. Norman Dodge's book, How the Brain That Changes Itself, brilliant. And so we've got a lot of tools that Napoleon Hill just didn't have to understand how people think, right? So that's one big thing. The second thing that is different about the studies that I did with the top achievers is Napoleon Hill only included business leaders. He didn't include the celebrities, the athletes, people who have made their money on the internet, which we've got now. I think the fastest world record for a millionaire now is 6 minutes and 33 seconds starting from zero. And they did it with the internet. In Napoleon Hill's day, that would never have happened. You just could not do it. The technology wasn't there. And so there's a lot that's changed. Now, one of the things that I think is for me kind of interesting about, that shift is in Napoleon Hill's day, he also shared the thought that if you believe it, whatever the mind of man can, conceive and believe, he can achieve. I'm sorry, guys, I'm going to tell you that that's only part of the picture. And if you think about it, speaking about reality TV, if you've tuned into American Idol or The Voice or any of these shows, they always kind of show you behind the scenes before the kid gets up on America's Got Talent or whatever, and he says, I'm the next winner. I'm the next big deal. I'm going to win this contest. Well, he certainly believes it, doesn't he? But he gets now in front of the judges, he opens his mouth to sing, and everybody's like, wah, 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 right? Like, it just didn't work, right?
The truth comes out.
The truth comes out. And so here's what I'm going to tell you is that I think the missing step here, it's not enough to believe it. You've got to believe it enough that you're going to take action. You're going to believe it enough that you're going to get committed and get skilled. You're going to believe it enough that you're going to establish the right mentors, not just a bunch of yes people in your life, but people who will really tell you if you're on the proper path. And I think that for most people, they're afraid to do that because they're afraid of the work that it's going to take or what they might hear, right? And so I think it's really important that, let me maybe phrase it this way. Very early in my career to build wealth in my own life, I had one of my mentors who was a billionaire, and he talked to me about an opportunity that he said I should consider. And I started saying, oh, yeah, well, it's a great idea, but maybe we should try this. And he stopped me, he goes, are you trying to add to this? Are you like trying to change this? I said, it just might work easier if we did this. And I kept trying to give suggestions. He stopped me and he said, listen, let me just give you a little bit of advice here. He says, you can be rich or you can be right. You can't be both. If you want to be right, you get to keep everything that you've created, everything that you're doing, every way that you're looking at things. You get to keep that. That's the good news. But the bad news is that you get to keep it. And if you want to be rich, you've got to understand that there's people that are a heck of a lot smarter than you. And there are things that you don't know. If you want to know how smart you are, your bank statement is the report card of how well you understand this concept. And for me at the time, I knew I didn't understand it. So I decided it's time to keep my mouth shut and make sure that I'm a learner rather than trying to instigate what I believe is the correct way to do things. Our ego is the biggest thing that keeps us from becoming successful, right? We need to really just understand that everything for our success has been provided if we will listen. And that's the problem most people have, right?
So that was all amazing information.
Oh,
wow.
well,
That was
life
so
experience,
much
man.
fun, man. Let me tell you,
Yeah.
that was a great ride. I'm just totally
We're
focused.
just getting started, right? We're
Yeah.
getting started.
Well, and let me just recap a little bit because some things that I was really excited about what I heard. One is surrounding yourself with the right people, and
100%.
and it sounds like the right people isn't just the people that you're talking to every day. Like you said, it's also around what you're reading and what you're watching on YouTube, and whose workshops you're going to, and doing it in a much wider scale. Also, the fact that you're looking in every form of success, spiritual success, acting, athletes, just you're drawing on so many different places. And that's what it really takes now to be successful, is to understand there's so much going on. It's like the spiritual handyman show. We've got to be on YouTube. We've got to be on our website. We've got to be on Facebook and Instagram, and all of those things have to be in place for there to be success. And it sounds like you really have a deep passion for helping people understand that. A question that came up while while I was enthralled with what you were saying, quite honestly, is around the fear, and we're afraid of what people will say. So help some of our folks understand for themselves that they want to take the next step. What do they do with that fear? How do they manage that? Give us a tool to put that away or douse it or something.
Sure. Well, I'll give you two really massive considerations about fear. Fear is an interesting thing. Number one, fear cannot exist in the present. What do I mean by that? Fear cannot exist in the immediate. Fear requires the future. Okay. So fear can only exist with a future. Now, what I mean by that, think about this. If we look about, the experiences that we see in our world. Let's say, for example, there's a raging fire and somebody's stuck inside and they're going to die and this whole bit. Well, if you look at the most courageous fireman, doesn't think about what will happen to him. He doesn't think about what the future will bring. He heads into the fire and he begins, right? That courage that's there overtakes any kind of fear. So when we act in the present, we never ever have fear. Our fear is not a response. Fear is something we create by imagining outcomes that may never ever exist. The other thing that's interesting about fear for most people is fear is actually an external thing. It doesn't exist internally. So we create it as we look at either comparing or competing or looking at, any kind of, giving away our power to other people. It's only victims that really have fear. And if we were to, and I know this is getting really kind of maybe a roundabout way to explain it. There's really, I noticed, interviewing the top achievers, there's two sort of extremes. There's one which we're going to call the reactive personality. The other is the proactive personality. Now, when we explain this in personal power mastery, we actually use it also on a continuum. And part of that continuum is called the willingness continuum. Now, at this one that's reactive on this end, that's where all the broke people are. Okay. So that's where there's less money, less opportunity, less freedom, less time, poor relationships, crappy outcomes. Everything is there. Okay. And fear, by the way, resides there too. So in this area of reactive, that's people who give their power away. So they're people who, if they're broke, they blame it on the economy. They blame it on the marketplace. They say that their customers aren't responding. They're saying if they're in a trouble with their spouse, it's their spouse's fault. It's like everything is someone else's fault here, right? Now, on the other end of that is proactive. And that's people who, instead of giving their power outside, their power is determined from the inside. Get what I'm saying? So they make their decisions in a, an advantage point of view and also an advanced point of view. They predetermine what they want. They decide it before the outcomes arrive. And if something doesn't work out in their circumstances, they understand they've got the power to make adjustments and change it. In fact, in personal power, one of the things that we talk about in our training is that if you own it, you can change it. So at this end of things, people really own what's going on in their life. If there's a circumstance they don't like, they change it. Now, here's the thing that's really insightful about this. You want to expand what you have to begin by expanding who you are. And one of the big expansions that occurs at this end is that we actually accept and solve problems that are not ours or that we did not create. Now, let me explain what that means. If you're working at a job right now, the easiest way to explain this is, look at the guy who gets the most promotions and makes the most money. He's the guy that solves problems that he did not create or that he had nothing to do with. So in other words, when we solve other people's problems or help rescue other people or even give them value beyond what our involvement should be, we find ourselves expanding and growing. A person who gives out more value than they're compensated for will eventually be the manager or the leader over those who can't solve their own problems, right? So this is what we need to do when we're looking at fear. We need to understand that fear is in the present. And if you are, or fear does not exist in the present, if we are in a present moment and we're always looking towards the future saying, what if, maybe it, or this will, or we're going to always find fear attracted to us. Okay? Because the truth is we don't know what's going to happen in the future, right? So if we're present and we just focus on what we can do now, not what we could do. And by the way, here's a neuroscience thing for you too that was interesting when it was explained to me. The brain, the human mind, will never ever get to work or have faith in anything it could do. It always has faith in what it can do, right? So only the stuff that we can take action on immediately do we become fully committed to. We never get fully committed to a could do. We always continue to noodle it, right? So our brain will always find fear with the things that could happen. It never gets to work on the things that can happen unless we give it that direction, right? And then, as I mentioned, fear is also a factor of those influences that we bring into our lives. We talked about influence a minute ago. If you have fearful friends, you're going to surround yourself with fear. If you have people that are inspiring, or like, this, when you've gone to a seminar and there's been amazing people that have shared the stage, and then the person you're sitting to is also inspirational, and everyone, it's easy to feel powerful in those moments. But now you go home and you got to, I'm not criticizing anybody's spouse, but you get a spouse that's wah, 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 negative to those things, or kids that wah, 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 or parents that are wah, wah, wah. Well, then all of a sudden you gravitate to the influences that you're around. And if they fear and doubt, if they say, listen, you've never started a business before, it's probably going to fail. Like cousin Reggie started business and he's a loser, so you're going to fail just like him. Well, all of a sudden you're going to have these doubts and fears that creep in. And those fears are nurtured by what you surround yourself with. So you've got to really selectively choose what you'll believe. Now, I'm not saying, like every family tree has a few monkeys. Even mine does too, right? Okay. So, but here's the deal is we decide what we're going to believe. And if we have an awareness that someone's kind of bringing us down, we can put them where they need to be. We can cut out the chatter if we're aware of what it is. And that really only comes as we, again, if we own it, if we get to this side of things and we really make a decision of who we're going to be, we can decide who we're not going to be. And that's just as an important decision as deciding who you will be. Right?
Whew. That was a lot of powerful information. Wow.
Hopefully
wow.
helpful.
Your passion is off the charts, my man. That's a beautiful thing to see and to
you ought to see our live events. Our
to.
live events are crazy.
Yeah, I bet. I like
They're
this.
off the hook.
You are the kind of fella I want to have lunch and dinner with, right?
We have a good time.
Absolutely. Man, those are such great tools, and somebody that is just starting out, trying to kind of get themselves in that, surrounding themselves with a different crew. Say we're, I'm a fella that is, that's kind of stuck in the friends that I have. I'm still hanging out with my buddies from high school and, doing whatever. And I'm not knocking any of that. I'm just painting a little picture here.
Sure.
What would you say would be, if I'm that guy, what would be your suggestion for the next steps? Like do this and see what happens.
Well, there's two thoughts that come to my mind, and we'll maybe talk about this one in detail a little bit later on if we've got the time, but the power of choice. First of all, recognize that you have a choice. Where you're at doesn't dictate where you're going to stay, right? So you can make some choices, and the more choices you recognize in your life, the more power you have. The problem with most people is they kind of accept where they are, right? Like they assume that, hey, this is the way life is, and you will always rise to the standards that you set for yourself. If you believe that you are, how should we say, worthy of more will appear. If you believe that you're at your max as everything that you're entitled with, that's where it's going to stay, right? So you've got to be really, really careful about what you decide is, let's call it your thermometer in life. What are your standards? You got to set that intentionally and set it far higher than you give yourself credit. It's kind of interesting that a lot of people talk about this idea of stepping outside of your comfort zone. Well, to some extent, I disagree with that because I believe a person should step in your brilliance zone. I don't believe you should step into a way that you're uncomfortable. Like I don't do my own dental work, right? That would be a foolish thing to do. I'm not comfortable doing that. And I should never, ever learn that skill, right? But when I'm brilliant at certain things and I dial more into that brilliance, what is it Napoleon Hill says? The riches are in the niches, right? So when we dial into our greatest brilliance, that's where you want to become uncomfortable. That's where you really want to learn to kind of escalate where you're at a high level. So if you're not sure, kind of, hanging out with your high school buddies, and that's okay. Find out what you're really brilliant at and start igniting that. Now, here's the other point that I think is really important to make is that a lot of people make their decisions for their future based on where they are, not where they want to be. Decisions have nothing to do with where you are. You're already there, right? You're locked in. But if you want to have a decision, let's say you want to have these better relationships. Let's say you want to have more money in your life. You want to have more time. You want to have a loving companion, or you want to, have a multi-millionaire or billionaire as a mentor. What it's going to require is a new decision. Because the decision that you made in the past that created you here, like if you're now in the moment saying, I can't do it because I don't have enough money. Well, you know, the only thing that's going to change the idea that you don't have enough money is a new decision. So you must do something new if you want a new result. And I think that that's a really big problem that a lot of people have, is they make their decisions from that limited scarcity point of view rather than really the determined destination of where you want to be. So start making your decisions differently. And you know, when I interviewed Richard Branson, you know, the guy from Virgin and all that kind of stuff, something really interesting he said, you know what, a lot of times, you know, people ask me how I make my decision about things. Do I sit down? Do I weigh out the pros and cons? Do I look at the return on things? Do I look at how much it'll cost? Do I look at the staffing I'll need? He goes, no. He says, in my gut, if I know what's right for me, I do it. And I figure out how to do the details later. And I think that that's the way we need to run our life. Remember that top achievers, they're not perfectionists. They're improvisers. They're not perfectionists. They're improvisers. And here's the analogy I like to use. If you're at home and you know that you need to get to a certain location, do you wait for all the lights to be green before you get in your car? You wait for a report back that says, okay, Jason, all the lights are green. You can go. Like, how stupid would that be? You sitting on your couch waiting for such a phone call. It'll never happen. But most people live their life that way. They wait for everything to be perfect before they get driving on the street. Well, again, top achievers are not perfectionists. We don't wait for all the green lights. We get in our car, we drive. We understand sometimes there might even be a detour on the road. There might be somebody driving slow that we got to get around. There might be a light we have to wait and readjust. And we know that even if we make the first, second, or third light, we can even change our mind as far as where we want to go. But we're moving, and we're much farther ahead than the people who are still sitting at home on the couch. And here's the other thing too that I think is kind of neat. My wife found this as a quote, and then she read it back to me one time. She said, one of the things that she loves about our family is that I dream of living on the moon. And because of that, we all get to live in the stars. And that is, I think, a powerful thing to think about. Because most of us are satisfied to just simply look up at the stars. Like most people do. They look at all these top achievers and they figure, oh, it would be so neat to be famous or rich or to be on that stage speaking to those big audiences. Well, here's the big deal is if somebody else in the world has figured out how to do that, why not you, right? Why not you? And why are you, man, I almost cussed there. Why are we waiting for permission to be brilliant? Why are we waiting for permission to be the best that we can be, right? You're the only person whose permission even matters. And if you're waiting for an outside source of validation to open a door for you, it's never going to happen.
That is all amazing stuff and really well put. Thanks for sharing that. And just your passion itself is motivating, and what you're saying has immense value. I can't imagine the page turner that your book really is. I've been fortunate enough to get some blurbs of it, but man, I want to know where can I get it? Where can I get my copy? And where can I find out about your live events? Tell me about that.
Well, I know that the book Personal Power Mastery is online on a variety of sites. I know you can order it at Barnes & Noble and in Canada, Chapters in Indigo and Waterstones in the UK and all these places. But Amazon obviously is a great place to go. So that's perfect. But here's the deal. What I want to give to you guys today, your viewers here, is let's give you guys some free stuff, right? I think free stuff is always good. I want you to get an opportunity to see if you like me, if you find my stuff useful. So here's kind of what we might best do. Everybody nowadays is on Facebook. So we've got a handful of groups that we have on Facebook where I regularly provide videos, content, articles, interviews. I even bring some of these top achievers that we've talked about onto our YouTube or our Facebook platforms. And so we share information that's there. And we share it on a variety of things. If you want to learn about how to create wealth and abundance, that's something I'm passionate about. And it's very easy to make money once you know how. I kind of say it's like making cupcakes. Once you have the recipe, you can make as many as you want, right? But we also talk about business and growing business. We talk about relationships. We talk about all what I call the 5 pillars of success. If you want to know what that is, come join us. We'll talk more about it. But here's the deal. Head over to Facebook. You can type in my name, Douglas Vermeeren, into the things. You'll get a variety of groups. I think the 2 most powerful ones that I like is Personal Power Mastery. Well, obviously, that's all this content we're talking about. But the other is called the Entrepreneur Academy. And as you can imagine, when I went out and I interviewed 400 of the world's top achievers, many of them were business leaders. Many of them have stayed close friends with me. And so they're faculty members on our platform, the Entrepreneur Academy. So I've got people in there like we've had, the founders of FedEx, people from Nike and Reebok and Disney and the Vita Group. I've got Ron Klein. Ron Klein, you guys would know him. He's a super cool dude. You know, your credit cards, this magnetic strip that's on every single one of them, Ron Klein's the guy that invented that. Okay. So he's one of the faculty members with us. We've got Brian Smith, the founder of Boots in there. And like the list goes on, just some amazing people that can help you with a new perspective, a new way of looking at your life, a new way of looking at either your business or looking at your finances. Or here's the deal. You can only earn it if you have learned it. And so come and learn from the best. That's how I did it. I was a dumb kid with zero experience in life or in business or in money. And just sitting with some of these mentors shifted my life that inside of 6 months, I was able to do $1.6 million as a 19-year-old. So if you're over 19, you remember how you thought about life when you were 19. If you were like me, you weren't very smart at 19, but I was smart enough that I was able to follow the instructions of some millionaires and billionaires and make their life experience and mine to be very, very similar, right? That's what you want to do.
Right on. Thanks. Thank you for sharing your Facebook groups with us. And I will be putting some of that information down in the comments section and in the description section so that everybody can just click on that and get where they need to. That is some powerful backing as far as getting some insights into life in general and success and what to do next. So thank you for the incredible value that you have brought to our viewers and our listeners today. Your passion just by itself is inspiring, and then everything that you've shared with us has been extremely powerful. I'm a better fella just having sat here with you. So thank you for taking all that time and the time today. So that was really fun. Did you have anything else you want to share with folks before we wrap it up here? Or is that the selfless promotion? Because you got a minute.
We don't need to do any more promotion. You'll find us, and if we're your vibe, you'll join our tribe. It's that simple, right? If this is the right vibe for you. But one thing that I would like to just kind of share in conclusion that I think a lot of people forget is just never forget how much within your own power your life is. You have more power to control your destiny than you ever thought possible. And your outcomes that you really want, the goals and the things that you really, really want out of life are far closer than you ever imagined. When you can dial into the right frequencies and really recognize what you can do, you're much closer than you ever imagined. So get out there and do it. That's what you need to do next.
Take action.
Take action.
Take action. It's the way you see it is almost like every one of us is on the verge of that breakthrough. Get your butt up and do something about it.
I believe it. I'm
That's
serious.
beautiful.
And I've seen it again and again. You don't have any idea how close you are to what you really want.
Wow. That's amazing. Thank you so much, Douglas, for being on the show and for bringing the tremendous value that you have today and passing along the Facebook groups. I'm excited to dive into some of that information and watch some of those videos. As the host of the Spiritual Handyman, I love it when people bring this kind of value, and this is what it's really all about, being in service to others and helping other people figure out their way. And you've just made it right here. It is right here in front of me. And I hope that some other people feel the same way. So one last time, Doug, thank you so much for your presence today and for bringing what you do to this platform.
Well, thanks again for having me. I look forward to doing it again one of these days.
That would be amazing. On behalf of the Spiritual Handyman team, thanks. And we will see you guys on the next episode.